#GenesCulture by Kirsten Drexinger, Lena Nelson, Connor O'Neill, and Jake Wiley. Lactose. It's a carb you probably see at almost every meal. Lactose is the primary carb in dairy. Most humans, about 3/4 around the world, are not able to digest lactose, making them lactose intolerant. Lactose is digested by lactase, which is located in the small intestine. Most infants can digest lactose. However, after people are weaned off of lactose after breastfeeding, the lactase gene gets turned off for people that are not lactase persistent. People that are lactose intolerant have their lactase gene turned on past breastfeeding. If lactose enters the body and undergoes hydrolysis, where water attacks and splits lactose into two sugars, galactose and glucose, then you are lactose tolerant. However, the sugar cannot be broken down without lactase. Lactase is not a carbohydrate. It just catalyzes the hydrolysis of lactose in the stomach. The formula for lactose is C12H22O11. Lactose is a disaccharide and is polar, which means it is soluble in water. When lactose is not absorbed by the small intestine, it is fermented by bacteria in the large intestine, producing carbon dioxide, which results in the symptoms of lactose intolerance, which include bloating, gas, vomiting, and diarrhea. Why do some people have the ability to digest lactose while others don't? The inherited ability to digest lactose originated with genetic mutations that code for making lactase. The first genetic mutation started around modern-day Turkey, around 10,000 years ago, spreading into Africa and the Middle East. Different mutations can cause the same phenotype, so the mutation of a person in Europe can be different than the mutation in Asia. No other species is considered lactose intolerant, showing how this mutation persisted because humans had a need that acted as a selective pressure for this mutation. Since the mutation is for lactase persistence, being lactose intolerant is actually the norm. Lactose is the last intestinal enzyme to develop, which may be a reason it's the first to go. The mutation occurs in the coding region of genes, but the main indicator is whether the gene is turned on in the regulatory region of the genes. The regulatory regions can be thought of as a switch. The lactase gene is on chromosome 2, and the lactase switch is in a neighboring gene, MCM6, and all the mutations are within 2 introns of that gene. A key point to know is that the mutation is in the genetic regulatory switches for the lactase gene, not the lactase gene itself. The frequency of the mutation coincided with the frequency of the pastoralist culture, which is why this can be considered gene culture coevolution. Being lactose tolerant is a dominant trait, meaning that you only need one copy from one parent of the gene coding for turning on the lactase gene to be lactase persistent. Producing this enzyme can be associated with 2 particular nucleotides, nucleotides 13910 and 22018. In nucleotide 12910, thymine codes for lactase persistence, and cytosine codes for lactase non-persistence. In nucleotide 22018, adenine codes for lactase persistence, while guanine codes for lactase non-persistence. Natural selection is the process where organisms better adapted to their environment tend to survive and produce more offspring. Natural selection has played a large role in the evolution of lactase persistence. Around 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, African settlements were using dairy. Pottery from European and Middle Eastern civilizations from 9,000 years ago show evidence of dairy. When people started using dairy, the frequency of lactase persistence rose because there was a selective advantage for those that could digest lactose. It is hypothesized that the selective force arose when famine hit crops, leaving populations to be dependent on milk. Those that could not digest lactose did not have a food supply, and when they did consume lactose, the symptoms caused dehydration, which led most to death. Those that lived had the mutation for lactase persistence, allowing them to pass this gene to their offspring. Because there was an advantage for this gene, natural selection played a large role. An example of this is seen with Kenyans and Tanzanians, where lactose tolerance rose rapidly as the culture became quickly dependent on milk. In addition to natural selection, gene flow has also acted as a major evolutionary force with lactase persistence. Gene flow, commonly thought of as migration, is any movement of genes from one population to another. As civilization became more civilized and developed ways of transportation, cultures could intermingle. As cultures began to interact with one another, genes were exchanged. If a cultural group that was mainly lactose tolerant mated with a cultural group that was not lactase persistent, then the offspring would be dominant, because lactose tolerance is a dominant gene towards being lactase persistent. This allowed for the lactose intolerant group to have offspring that were lactase persistent. Since the frequency of the mutation coincided with the frequency of the pastoralist culture, lactase persistence can be considered gene-culture coevolution. Thanks to science, the mutation for lactase persistence has continued into our generation, allowing many of us to be able to enjoy dairy products.